Welcome to GovFocus. I'm Laura Manweiler, staff writer at GovCIO Media and Research. Joining me today are Wade Zariello, Director of Infrastructure and User Services at CMS, and Lamont Yarbrough, former CISO at HHS. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
On today's GovFocus, we'll discuss strategies, challenges, and best practices for cloud and hybrid cloud adoption across government. My first question is for both of you. I'd like to start with Lamont. How has your cloud strategy evolved over the past 2 to 3 years, and why?
Okay, I'll preface that by my response will be more based along of the federal response, if you will.
Okay.
So, of course, we've collectively over through the past year or so have made progress, but federal cloud adoption, faces challenges. There are perhaps some slower decision making because of requisite oversight requirements. There are perhaps some limited incentives with respect to system owners and their unique systems and what it means, to their missions and their propensity to move to the cloud for a variety of reasons, financial, otherwise. There's a need for, workforce upskilling in the cloud and AI technologies, specifically AI, and ML technologies as they become more prominent throughout the space. And agencies, specifically the agency I just departed, we continue to develop policies kind of to address some of these challenges, including updating cloud strategies. It's not a dynamic, rather, it is a dynamic situation based upon known and new information, budgeting, workforce skilling, as I've just mentioned, improving, multiple environments and enhancing overall AI, governance framework. So just to name a few, of those issues.
Yeah, Wade.
Yeah, and I'd like to add, at CMS, right, our strategy over the past 2 to 3 years has changed significantly. Historically, we've been about 90% AWS type environment, right? We have a pretty mature and a long-built cloud, right? Started in about 2014 in CMS, where we started standing up an AWS environment and moving workloads on. Well, the past 2 to 3 years, right, especially with the ascension of AI and the move towards access to new AI services, we took a really focused approach in order to onboard and bring new cloud service providers to our customers, right? We recognized that a one size, one cloud fits all model wasn't necessarily what we wanted to do long term, right? For various reasons, access to best of breed services and technology, access to better cost efficiencies and pricing efficiencies and to drive and invest more in strategic roadmaps for other services that may or may not have been best fit in a single cloud, but then also allowed us to really lean into a diverse, resilient, and reliable infrastructure across cloud service providers. We realized that in today's world, like leaning on one cloud service provider as the sole environment for a lot of our most critical business apps wasn't exactly where we wanted to be long term. And so over the past 8 to 12 months, we launched a project that we call Project Fusion internally that has been very instrumental in us bringing on not just advancements to our AWS environment, right? We are standing up a new AWS Outpost environment. We are just went operational with a new Google Cloud Services environment for applications to host and rely on. We are migrating from a Microsoft Azure for Government to Microsoft Azure Commercial environment for better price efficiencies, access to better AI tools, access to better services. And then we've also made a focused investment on Oracle, right, as we look to stand up an Oracle Cloud environment, but we're also making investments in the Oracle Cloud at Customer environment, right, bringing some of those most critical functions on premise in a Exadata as a service, cloud at customer, compute as a service, so that we can better meet our applications and technologies where they are with the best technology that fits them.
Well, and when you talk about hybrid options at CMS, can you talk to me a little bit how you are implementing zero trust in a hybrid environment?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's obviously one that is a little bit of a loaded topic, right? And I'll sort of go back to some of the foundations from a zero trust model, right? And, to me, right, scaling out zero trust in a hybrid cloud environment really follows the IDD approach, right? Identity, device, and data driven, right? And so as you scale to more cloud service environments, you obviously have much more larger environment and attack surface, right, for bad actors or for threats, right? And so what we've done is taken a very focused approach in order to harmonize our zero trust, threat modeling, a migration towards like new TIC3 services in order to facilitate ingress and egress traffic into our cloud environments to ensure, proper inspection, right, proper threat updates, threat analysis, and then really increasing the visibility, right? One of the biggest parts about zero trust is visibility, right, and making sure that the visibility is given to the correct teams in order to make very focused decisions and understand the threats in their environment and understand the security of their environment, right? And we've really made strong investments in that zero trust realm in order to improve not just identity, right, not just device, but also data driven and visibility specifics for all of our cloud service providers.
Right. And if I could add a little bit to that, and just
Yeah.
overarchingly from an overarching HHS perspective, there is a ZT working group at the headquarters that of course CMS participate in. They meet on a fixed schedule to kind of discern movements with respect to CMS and others on how they're faring, kind of identifying key issues that address how well they're faring in a particular space within the zero trust framework, and kind of taking those lessons learned and identifying issues and pros of what they discovered with respect to their deployment efforts and kind of coalescing that into the overarching group so everyone can kind of learn from it and move forward as a collective.
Right now, and I'm glad you brought up lessons learned, and because I do have a question for both of you, but we'll start with Lamont. What are some of the biggest challenges in implementing hybrid cloud and getting compliance?
There's probably many. And when you talk about agencies such as CMS and others, or within the entire framework, within an entire federal framework per
Mhm.
se, which, we go after a number of complex environments, complex missions, etc. I would say from my purview that we have made strong progress on the technology side, but perhaps the workforce readiness and the cyber integration haven't necessarily kept pace. Cloud adoption scales. I think we're now reporting some 75% or so of organizations are leveraging cloud adoption in the federal civilian frameworks. But with that, and I think it was just mentioned by my colleague here, that the attack surface expanded with it, right? At the same time, we're facing something to the magnitude of 4.8 global cyber workforce spots that are not filled. That's according to ISC squared, that they've reported on that. So from a CISO lens, in my purview or from my perspective, rather, it's critical to kind of plan, prepare and create purpose for resilience and, security, under stress, especially when, breaches costs are now averaging about $5 million per breach. And that's been the case for a number of years. So we're seeing a clear opportunity to kind of strengthen the workforce, to kind of fully realize the value of hybrid cloud scenarios, because there's somewhat to the magnitude of 90% of organizations that report those cyber skills gaps. And cloud security is now one of the most in-demand capabilities. Again, that's according to C squared as well. So the technology is evolving quickly. Level of dynamism is kind of hard to keep track of. So values only rise when, technology and workforce and security kind of, mature as a collective together.
Wait, are you seeing similar challenges with compliance at CMS?
Yeah, so there's two things that I would mention on this topic, right? And I would sort of boil them down to two keywords: identity,
Mhm.
right, and governance, right? And so what we've seen as part of hybrid cloud, and these are challenges that we're tackling head on, right? And we've seen the need to harmonize identity services across various environments and cloud service providers, right? And that can be challenging because each and every has their own flavor about how identity is done or how identity is managed, right? And that could be used against us, right, as an environment that needs to have a strong identity posture, right, that needs to have that integrated into vetting and credentialing, and needs that to be part of the fabric of our ecosystem as it relates to identity and ensuring the right person, right, the correct assets, right, the least the least available or zero trust model is followed. load, least access type environment. So identity is been key and a big challenge for us as it relates to integrating multi-cloud. But then governance as well, right? Governance related to patch management, related to security vulnerability tracking and management, related to optimal setup for cloud environments, whether that's the model from account to VPC, right? To make sure that not only is it compliant from a security perspective, but it's also compliant from a cost optimization, right? And streamlining perspective, because it's very easy to make a mistake or to have the wrong image or to have the wrong template as it relates to setting up new customers or setting up new environments that can really have a cost impact, right? That's that's different from a security impact. And so I would sort of bring those down to two key themes there: identity and governance related to having a strong identity across multiple cloud service providers, and then strong governance as it relates to not only identity and security, but then also cost optimization as well.
And that's something I was hoping we could talk a little bit more about. I think sometimes we focus on the challenges, but how does this drive down costs for government agencies and ultimately taxpayers when we adopt a hybrid cloud like policy?
So I can start there, right? And we've already seen it. Like we've stood up brand new cloud service providers, and we haven't even been running some of the workloads in there yet, right? But we've also seen a strong desire from some of our cloud service provider partners to position their tooling, right, and position their technology as best of breed at best cost and best priced for the federal government, right? Not only from a normal financial ops perspective, but we've also seen that on the OneGov side, right, where we've taken advantage of a lot of OneGov offers and had a lot of successes that we've rolled out with Oracle team and with the AWS team, getting not only better pricing for some of our efforts, but also credits back for us to use for other efforts or to help our other customers within the ecosystem by spreading those cost benefits or those credits out across the entirety of our cloud program to lower cost, right? But also give them access to even better services and the best services across multiple cloud service providers.
Great. Lamont, is there anything you want to add? Otherwise, I have a question for you.
Yes, I agree with everything Wade says. And I think part of the challenge is kind of, when you talk about the full clarity with respect to systems within environments, because unfortunately there are somewhat, ghost systems, if you will, systems that aren't really known to the CIO shop and or CISO shop, et cetera. That kind of helps or doesn't help rather, but that kind of hinders the ability to fully appreciate every system within your environment under your control and ensure that there aren't disparate goal systems doing, their own thing and in different ways. There's a lack of clarity with respect to embracing these levels of service within the cloud, but not fully appreciating who's doing what and when. At the time that bad things happen, you unfortunately have to go and look at the contract language to discern, what the cloud service is and is not doing. And unfortunately, that's the worst time for you to fully appreciate who's doing what.
Mhm. I'd like to pivot a little bit to industry now. If you could both answer this question, we'll start with Lamont. What would you like to see? What capabilities would you like to see from cloud providers that you don't have currently?
I would like to see, and this is along the lines of what we were just discussing, I would like to see some type of cost management tool, if you will, to kind of better resource cost control and resource management. I would like the ability to kind of ensure that we do what we can based upon that type of resource to kind of optimize our investments in the cloud. I'd love to see some integrative, generative, and kind of agent AI capability into these platforms to kind of help us make better decisions and kind of operate, more efficiently. I'd love to see better multi-cloud networking solutions, perhaps, of course, enhanced security and compliance, kind of connected to precisely determine who does what and when. Where cloud providers are housing information and where. I could go back, years ago in a former CISO role where, the service provider would not provide clarity on where data was being stored of course, within the federal government framework. That's critically important to us that, data stays within the control or within, contiguous United States. So and I would also like to see the ability to kind of help organizations, cloud providers, to provide mechanisms to help organizations better tailor their services to specific mission sets within organizations. There's a lot of diversity in the space, but I would argue that there could perhaps be even more so to kind of fully uh, be able to leverage these technologies. And that would include some level of advanced networking features and perhaps even some better or more advanced security controls and capabilities.
Mhm.
And so I would add, and I would put a little bit of a personal twist on this from an everyday life perspective. In everyday life, there's common standards, right? Electricity, plumbing, right? Construction. There's a common standards that everybody works by, and I would love to see more common standards adopted across cloud service providers, whether that's networking, whether that's security and managed services, whether that's storage, right? I think what we've seen and challenges, in cloud is we've seen various different nuances across each cloud service provider as it relates to some of the core services, right? It's not the same level of effort for me or my team in order to do the networking work in order to stand up a new environment in one cloud service provider versus another cloud service provider. And the level of effort can vary greatly, right? And so we've seen, the ability to use various different, for example, security managed services in one cloud service provider that meets the need fairly well and sort of meets the mail as we need it. However, in another cloud service provider, we've seen it doesn't even, it doesn't compare at all, right, to one of their competitors. And so what I would love to see is more common standards adopted as part of core services, whether that's networking, whether that's security, whether that's basics about how many accounts you can have or how many VPCs you can have per an account, right? Some of those adopted across cloud service providers would be very beneficial.
Okay, well, before I let you guys go, I would love to hear what you think is underreported when it comes to hybrid cloud or cloud adoption. Lamont, I can start with you.
Again, I would start with shadow IT. I call it ghost IT, but shadow IT is all the same. Those are, I think, certainly underreported. I think the investments overarchingly are underreported. I think behavior within the CSP when bad things happen are underreported. I would perhaps start there.
Mhm.
I wouldn't know what we would have to offer from that perspective.
What I would say is when folks mention multi-cloud or hybrid cloud, right, immediately there's a sometimes negative connotation about level of effort or complexity or challenges in order to do that. And what I would say after undergoing this with my team over the past many months is this is not very hard to do, right? It takes a level of commitment, it takes a level of innovation, right? And it takes it takes a desire in order to tackle challenges head on that has allowed us to make significant progress in just 8 or 9 months and be able to stand up on multiple cloud service providers. I think, at CMS, right, we're on track to stand up 3 brand new cloud service providers in 6 to 8 months, right? Which is, while it's incredibly complex, right? The dedication in order to get there and to commit to a project plan that does that has been super beneficial for us.
Well, gentlemen, that's all of my questions. I appreciate you joining me for today's GovFocus. Is there anything you want to add before we end?
I appreciate you having me, and I had a
Thank,
great time. Thanks, Laura.
thank you. Thank you, Wade. Lamont, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me as well.